What we're going to look at is a Caddis Pupa, very simple fly. Just caught on with some Nano 12 on. A nice tip to start with for beginners is just push against there to cut that off, and we'll bury the tag end. I prefer to keep the thread lying flat, and you'll see I spin in an anti-clockwise direction when we're looking down. You can see the threads lying nice and flat. This covers ground, makes an even base as well. So for a rib, we're using a dark rib. We've just got some brown glint nymph here, catching this in, just on my near side. Tweak that down. Play around with various colours here. And I'm actually using a hank of mohair for the dubbing. I've cut short sections off and just knock it up in your fingers. It's a good tip. Great way of utilising longer fibres as well. We just need a small amount of this. Secret with dubbing is little and often. Pop that on there. Remember too, again for beginners, ideally we just want to work in one direction, so it's twist, release, twist, release. Twist, release, actually, because if we think about it, beginners sometimes make the mistake of going that direction and then this direction, and consequently as you're tightening it on, you loosen it off as well, so we don't want to do that. The other thing you'll see is I'm not actually using wax, because wax doesn't allow me to move the dubbing around, so I can just tweak it up to there to the tying in point. Just let's shorten that working thread. Form the body or the abdomen of this fly now. You see again, rather than build up a big mat of dubbing on the thread, what I'm actually doing is backtracking there to create the shape or profile that we ideally need. A little bit more dubbing. We're after sort of not too much of a taper. If we think of the shape, the body shape of a wasp, for example, on our Caddis Pupa. So you can see we're building up taper at the rear end, little bit of bulk in the midsection there, and we'll taper this down at the front as well. Nice and compact body because it's a pupa pattern, so we ideally want it to pierce through the surface film. And you notice for the legs we're actually using CDC. That's more for movement than flotation there. And just taking that tension off the thread again. Here's our rib. Wind this in open turns. It gives a nice contrast, and certainly on Caddis Pupa, if you look at the naturals, often there is dark banding as segments. So this just stands out nice. Catches the light well as we can see. Belt and braces, we could cut off there quite easily. I just double back. So I've got some pearly glint nymph here, 5 strands. We're actually going to catch this in. The beauty about this is because we're using several strands in effect. You can see I can splay it over with the thumb on the top there just to spread those out. So consequently they're gathered in and they'll come out and form a thorax cover like this, which just you could argue it's aesthetic, but certainly looks better to my eye. So what we're going to do, just as we're going to create some legs, a little bit of hairs for dubbing initially. This is more so to get a little bit of bulk there because we're going to use CDC fibres. Simply there's more movement with those. I'm actually working back now. Another good tip for beginners, they often always want to build a fly in a forward motion, just prove that you don't always have to do that. And as with fly tying as well, we're actually assessing it. You can see there, can crank the vice over, have a look at the fly. There's 1 or 2 fibres sticking out there. I mean, that's what we want. Again, you could arguably use some guard hairs in there and finish the fly off and pick some fibres out, but Ideally, nano silk lends itself, because it's so strong, to splitting down and introducing fur or fibre. In this case, we've got some CDC fibres here to form our legs. We're just waiting for the bobbin to come to rest, which will tell us there's no tension on the thread. I'm popping it over the finger there, you can see, and just going in with the dubbing needle. It's not even that, I'm being a little bit fussy there. We want approximately 50-50, that's far better, and we just split the thread like that. Again, a lot of beginners agonise over this. Once you understand it about the thread lying flat, for example, and no tension, obviously it's multi-fibred, so it's relatively easy to split. One of the other secrets is fine point dubbing needle, and just reserve that for splitting thread. Don't go dipping this into your varnish, because it will damage the point of the needle. So we're just offering these fibres up now into this dubbing loop. We can go up fairly close, trap them in there, gauging leg length. Just maintain tension under the thread there to hold this together, and it helps us control it. You can see now we're spinning the bobbin in a clockwise direction quite quickly. Haven't released it yet. We don't want this to spin too fast because it'll kick a lot of the fibres out. The other advice I'll give you now is just crank it up level there, because these fibres, if we're down here, will catch against the vice face there, and ultimately will again throw fibres out. So I'm just releasing tension gently there, and just allowing, you can see one or two fibres kicking out, nice and slow. I'm actually just wetting my fingers there and just pushing that up, one or two fibres kicking out, but we've got nice tension thread. The good thing is that in this situation, with regard to nano, it's very, very difficult to break the thread. Using a little bit of moisture there, just folding those fibres back so they don't get trapped down, and in open turns, wind your way forward. Thread's under quite a lot of tension now. We can just check it. You can see it actually balling up here, which tells us we're pretty much at max tension. So I'm taking a little bit of tension off. We've trapped those fibres. Couple of turns there in preparation for the head. Just part the fibres. CDC, you can see there, we've just parted them. Now we can look at bringing over our nymph glint for the thorax cover. Shorten up that working thread. We've actually got a fibre trapped in there. Take a turn or two in front, because then when we apply a little bit of pressure here, we don't loosen those previous turns of thread that have actually caught the thorax cover in place. Go in with your scissors, take a cut, flatten those down, and now we can proceed to build the head of the fly. Again, when we're using 12-0 nano, this there's not a massive amount of bulk involved. We just go on to our whip finish here. I prefer to whip finish with the fingers, with 5 turns. There we go. At this point, we'll just take our dubbing needle, gently close that loop up, feed in with our scissors, and just push on the thread. We can neaten these legs up, one or two of the fibres along. We want some long fibres, certainly where Caddis Pupa are concerned, because they've got a set of paddles, and the antennae as well are trailing back a long way. But just going randomly to cut some of those fibres out. I say randomly, I actually prefer to cut individual fibres, because if we take a cut, several fibres, they're all obviously of the same length. which is ideally what we want to avoid. So you can see there, nice fly, buggy looking insect, absolutely stacks of movement.